Alrighty, hello everybody. Why is Supreme Strait the worst map for new players? Let's break it down. To start off with, the main problem with Supreme Strait and its gameplay is that, well, you're kind of pigeonholed into certain roles here. Let me explain. If you have played Supreme Strait, you probably know what I'm talking about, but let's say you're more unfamiliar with the map, or you're coming from, never playing bar, you might be a little bit unfamiliar with how this map is played. Essentially, you have four main starting spots. You can either start as a naval player, so that'll mean that you're contesting these two seas over here, which are not connected, which is actually a very important point here that we're going to discuss later. You can play the naval start spots. You can play the eco or the air start spots back here. I'd actually define those as two separate ones, so you can play as an eco player or the air player. Your team needs both of them. Or you can play as a front line or support line player over here on the front line. So you're going to see people starting in these mech spots over here. And generally, you're going to have your more supporting players back here, and then the players in the front who are going to have a lot of pressure put upon them. Actually, a lot of pressure really everywhere for this game, or for this map. So let's start with the naval player. Why is this not good for new players? So most of the time when you're a new player, your main question is, how do I play Beyond All Reason? So you put yourself in a Supreme Strait noob lobby. You're like, this is going to be perfect with me, or for me. I'm going to learn how to play Beyond All Reason, then I can start playing other maps, that are lesser played and still have a good, foundation for my knowledge base, stuff like that. So they get put in a naval start spot. Let's learn the Navy. What's the problem with this? When a new player joins an 8v8 lobby, I think the thing that they want the least is to be pigeonholed into a 1v1 here. And that's essentially what a naval start is. So you can see I've kind of set up some battle lines here, but you're going to have a naval player start here and a navy player start here, and they're going to go at it. And after that, probably the first 10-15 minutes, that match is decided and that sea is lost. And like I was mentioning earlier, because these seas aren't connected, once you lose a sea, the only way to come back from that is either using your hovercraft platforms, which are going to become obsolete in about 15 minutes in the game if your opponent is on track for tier 2, or you're going to have to come in with air power. You're starting on a pretty low metal start, so typically, let's say if they're starting in this canyon start, you start back here, you expand upwards like this, which means that you're going to have a total of 6 mexes. Normally, you're going to have a little bit more than that because you're going to be trying to expand over here to these 2 maxes over here, and if you get lucky, able to win the sea, 4 maxes over here. That might not happen. If you lose the sea, you're going to be down to 6 maxes, going to be struggling for sure, and unless you can get a teammate to loan you a tier 2 constructor to get those T2 maxes, yeah, it's probably over for you. You're going to have to be turned into a supporting role, either going into air power or trying to help the front line over here, because there is no way you are breaking through this sea. Same goes for the northwest sea over here, right? I mean, because the seas aren't connected, if your team loses both of them, that's bad. If they lose one, it's still bad. And that's just a 1v1, a lot of pressure resting upon a new player's shoulders. Moving on to the frontline start position. Actually, I'd say this is probably the most noob-friendly start. Perhaps not this start way up front, but putting them back here or something like this, I think is not the worst option in the world, because they get to learn a lot of Beyond All Reason mechanics, right? Like producing units, how many units to produce, how to kind of tech up or rely on your teammates to tech up and stuff like that. But the main thing that they're not learning here with this front line, with this extreme choke point, is map control. Normally what you see in Beyond All Reason is kind of like a front line of units, and then with some certain terrain and stuff like that, you're going to be able to use your own slightly faster units to flank around them, do some damage, get that flanking bonus damage, stuff like that. With this front line, the only thing that matters is really the output of your units, and whether you're playing Armada or Cortex, vehicles or bots. It's not teaching you about how to actually maneuver those units in a way that's going to be effective on the battlefield. Definitely not as much as you should, though. It'll teach you a little bit, but not enough. And that's why I don't think it's a good new player lobby. Now, moving on to the last start positions, probably a position that you're never going to want your new players to be in is going to be trying to run air or eco down here. All horrible options. Because air requires a little bit more special knowledge, similar to Navy, actually, something I didn't mention. If you're playing Navy or hovercraft, very different from playing land, that's for sure. You're going to have to know some more special stuff. You're thrown into a bunch of new units that you don't know, really what that means. What is a cruiser versus a destroyer? Flagship should be pretty self-explanatory, but, stuff like that is all knowledge that you're going to need And not all maps have the water, so I'd say learning Navy isn't super essential for a new player. Similarly to learning air, air is very, very important for your game. If you lose air control, you're probably just going to be bombed to, you know, obliteration, unless your team was lucky enough to build some anti-air there. But yeah, very important, air players and eco players. Eco players carry the game. Another reason why new players should start on the front line is because if they do manage to lose that front line, you're down to only 3 players on the front line instead of the 4 that you normally had. So maybe something like this. If you're getting into that 15-minute range, your eco player is going to be able to start sending in those tier 2 constructors, tier 2 battle units, and start reinforcing that front line. That's when that eco player really, really starts to matter. And if you have a newer player on that eco position and they're not teching up as quick as the enemy over there, it's going to be bad news bears. That's for sure. So I guess that's the main point that I wanted to say with Supreme Strait. Please, I guess I'm making a PSA or maybe a push for something. This is a terrible map for new players because they're not learning beyond the reason mechanics, and they're being pigeonholed into certain roles that aren't useful for other maps. Like, these are all pertain specifically to Supreme Straits, and you'll see that in a lot of maps, right? There are optimal roles, but nothing as bad as this, and nothing quite so strenuous as well. Right? Like, again, this front line is going to be a 4v4, which actually isn't that terrible, but the Cs are 1v1. And sometimes, you know, the worst thing to happen to a new player is when stuff happens to them outside of their control. Now, in an 8v8, of course, you're always going to be relying upon your team, but it hinges a lot more on these these players out here. These Navy players are very, very important. This 1v1 is incredibly important. And it's something that's once lost, not really able to be gained back again. So there you go. Here's your PSA for the day. Let me know if you agree with me or not. It's okay if you don't, but I'd like to hear why, at least. And if you do agree, well, I guess we're best friends now. But yeah, any critique would be welcome. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe. I'm sure you've noticed these aphises down here by now. And yeah, thank you very much for watching. I'll see y'all later. Also, I'll be streaming every Friday from 4 to 8. From now until forever is the plan. So cool. Have a great day.